Well, in 2005, an Israeli archaeologist announced to the world that she had uncovered the ruins of King David's palace in Jerusalem.
For thousands of years, King Solomon's tomb remained a mystery, a subject of relentless pursuit for historians and explorers. Beneath the ancient hills of Jerusalem, where countless stories lie buried amidst the earth and stone, a recent discovery has captured everyone's attention. For years, people could only speculate, but now, for the first time, it seems this discovery has brought us closer to the truth. The question isn't just whether this is truly a site connected to King Solomon, but the real surprise lies in what was found there, something that has forced history, science, and religion to reconsider everything. In the Bible, Solomon is considered a symbol of wisdom and immense wealth, and the Ark of the Covenant, said to have been housed in the temple built around 950 BC, and was the center of faith for all of Israel during that time. Now, imagine if something was buried with Solomon that was deemed necessary to keep hidden from the world, why? And how was the truth kept concealed for so long? Before time blurs this story once again, stay with us, because this discovery from beneath Jerusalem could change our perspective on history. Before we delve deeper into this, please subscribe to the channel. This channel brings you such videos every day. This story is connected to Solomon's tomb, which for centuries people considered nothing more than a legend. Most historians believed that such a place never existed. But then, mention of an old, almost forgotten tunnel beneath the hills of Jerusalem surfaced, and that's where the whole story took a new turn. For a very long time, people had been excavating in this area, searching for a king who was said to have been buried with immeasurable wealth and honor. That king's name was Solomon, a name that still resonates in history today. Solomon was famous not only for being considered incredibly wise, but also for building a kingdom that became a model of power and prosperity in its time. He ascended to the throne at a very young age, succeeding his father, King David. But his work was not limited to simply ruling. He transformed the entire kingdom. Trade flourished, gold and precious goods arrived from distant lands, and Jerusalem gradually became a prosperous center. It was during this period that the first temple was built, a project that took 7 years to complete. Cedar wood brought from Lebanon, gold-adorned sections, and stones so meticulously carved that the joints were almost invisible. All of this demonstrates the engineering prowess and resources available at the time. Stories of his wisdom are equally famous, like the tale of the 2 women who claimed the same child as their own. Solomon suggested dividing the child in 2, not out of cruelty, but to reveal the truth. The woman who was willing to give up the child to save its life was revealed to be the true mother. This decision cemented Solomon's reputation as a symbol of justice and wisdom. His fame spread so far that the Queen of Sheba came to visit him. She arrived with spices, gold, and many challenging questions. But after their meeting, she too acknowledged that what she had heard about Solomon was far surpassed by the reality. This is why Solomon is still considered not just a king, but one of the most mysterious and influential figures in history. Solomon's influence was not limited to Jerusalem. His name was so widely known in that era that his ships sailed across the seas to unknown lands. Ancient texts mention Ophir and Tarshish, places whose exact locations remain unclear today. Some believe these regions were in Africa, while others suggest they may have been connected to India. These journeys brought back ivory, precious goods, and other valuable items that could make any kingdom incredibly wealthy in that era. The copper mines in the Timnah Valley of southern Israel also tell a story from the same period. It is believed that the wealth extracted from these mines further strengthened Solomon's kingdom economically, and archaeologists continue to search for ancient evidence there to this day. But as great as his name was, an equally profound question remained. Where exactly was Solomon buried? Surprisingly, to this day, no tomb has been found, nor any clear indication. No name on the stones, no royal mausoleum. Some believe his tomb is hidden somewhere beneath the Temple Mount, while others think it might be in a cave that was deliberately sealed. For years, excavations were carried out, and theories were proposed, but each time the result was the same: nothing. Gradually, the search subsided, and most historians simply dismissed it as an unresolved mystery. But the story doesn't end there. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. Then something unexpected happened that drew everyone's attention back to this old mystery. A discovery, whether accidental or long hidden, was about to completely change the puzzle. What was revealed was not just a tomb. It was a clue that had been silently buried for nearly 3,000 years, as if the past itself was trying to speak again. And what was hidden inside, that was the beginning of the real story. The relentless search for the tomb. For hundreds of years, the search for King Solomon's tomb has been like chasing a truth that was visible but always out of reach. Sometimes medieval knights dug beneath the Temple Mount, and sometimes 19th-century explorers scoured the hills of Judea. Each time the result was the same: nothing concrete was found. Gradually, two schools of thought emerged. Some believed that such a tomb never existed, while others argued that the failure was due to incorrect maps, incomplete information, or simply bad luck. By the 21st century, the situation had reached a point where most experts had almost given up on the search. Then suddenly, things changed. Recently, an archaeologist named Dr. Emily Carter, known more for her meticulous examination of ancient documents than for grand discoveries, was poring over old records in the Jerusalem archives. There, she stumbled upon something that had previously been overlooked: tax records from the time of Solomon. Hidden within the ancient Hebrew texts was a small but significant clue. Payments were being sent to a place name that wasn't listed in any official register. The reference was to a location near the city of David, a place so cleverly concealed that its name had been lost to time. The city of David itself is a place where history seems to spring forth from the very ground, and excavations there consistently yield artifacts that connect in some way to biblical narratives. It was for this reason that Dr. Carter and her team decided to focus their efforts there. Using ground-penetrating radar technology, they began scanning a rugged slope in the Silwan area. The work was not easy. Jagged limestone, loose soil, and the sensitive nature of the surrounding area repeatedly forced them to halt their progress. The team continued their work day after day, until nature itself provided a clue. A sudden, heavy downpour loosened the soil on the hillside, and a small depression appeared in the ground. At first glance, it was clear that this section looked different from the surrounding rock. When the radar was run again beneath that spot, signals began to flash rapidly on the screen, like a heartbeat. A network of tunnels appeared below, not natural formations but deep structures carved by human hands. These tunnels were built into solid rock, approximately 13 meters below the surface. And it was here that it became clear that this discovery was not just another hypothesis, but a clue pointing to a very old and deliberately hidden secret. A mix of silence and excitement fell upon the team. Everyone understood that this was no longer an ordinary excavation. Work immediately began to secure the site, as every move was fraught with danger. It quickly became clear that the tunnel system was incredibly cleverly designed, with numerous false passages, misleading turns, and entrances deliberately leading in the wrong direction. One wrong decision could cause the entire structure, hidden for centuries, to collapse along with the surrounding rocks. Dr. Carter spent many nights deciphering fragments of ancient texts. These markings didn't explicitly state anything, but were left to confuse thieves and grave robbers. When these fragments were pieced together, the clues pointed to a door that was invisible yet present. This wasn't a flashy trap, but a quiet, intelligent, and meticulously crafted security system, hidden in plain sight. The part that has been uncovered so far is only a very small portion of the entire structure. In fact, less than a quarter. Most of the structure is still buried underground, and further excavation is needed to understand it. What we can see is only a small piece of the story. But the real turning point didn't come here. The real change occurred when the team stumbled upon an old folk tale. Here, an incomplete story passed down through generations of shepherds. A tale of a mountain that glowed in the moonlight, of a wall that looked like stars from afar. Dr. Carter stood on the edge of that very mountain. The ground was wet from the rain, his feet sinking with every step. Yet, there was something different about the silence. The stillness of the rocks, their solidity, as if they were deliberately guarding a secret. At that moment, he was convinced they were in the right place. The destination was near, and that feeling was palpable. And beyond that sealed tunnel, behind a door untouched for thousands of years, something lay waiting to be discovered. What unfolded next not only challenged historical perceptions, but also stopped the team in their tracks, because as that ancient seal was broken, the story was about to change forever. This week, archaeologists have come tantalizingly close to the tomb of a king long believed lost to history. Imagine a single stone slab standing between the modern world and a 3,000-year-old secret, a slab, perhaps, never meant to be moved. When the seal shifted, it didn't open silently. It was as if something ancient had taken its first breath in centuries. After weeks of working amidst jagged limestone, swirling dust, and a constant undercurrent of doubt, Dr. Emily Carter and her team had followed every lead, from ancient tax records to a forgotten hillside in Silwan. And now they stood before the stone slab, had buried so deep it seemed the earth itself had conspired to conceal it. But this was no ordinary stone. It was simultaneously a barrier, a warning, and a riddle. Removing it wasn't simply a matter of brute force. It was part of a larger design, meticulously crafted to protect whatever lay beyond. False passages and dead ends were hidden within the walls of the narrow tunnels. Some sections were designed to collapse if tampered with incorrectly. The technology was primitive, but the thinking was that of a mastermind. It was clear that this elaborate system had been devised by those who anticipated tomb robbers and sought to stay one step ahead. As the ground trembled faintly beneath their feet, Dr. Carter carefully examined the ancient Hebrew markings near the entrance. There was a specific sequence, 7 lines, 7 symbols, and an engraved pattern that corresponded to the 7 years of construction of the first temple. The temple, the rebuilding of Jerusalem, and intimations of the future. These weren't mere decorations. They were clearly clues. The team took out their laser tools and 3D scanners and began mapping every single detail, big and small, as if it were a highly delicate operation. The tension in the air was so thick it felt heavy. A single mistake could jeopardize the entire team. For 3 days straight, they adjusted levers, aligned gears, and held their breath every time the stone slab shifted. The deeper they went, the quieter the tunnel became, as if the mountain itself were listening. Then the moment arrived. A heavy sound, a low rumble, and dust began to rain down from the ceiling. The stone slab began to move, not quickly, not easily, but enough to reveal a thin crack in the darkness. The team stepped back and stared at the black void. There was no sound, no rush of wind, just a cool breeze and a profound silence. Following the protocols for protecting archaeological sites, they documented the historic moment on camera, for they all knew that what was about to be revealed was not just a place, but a new chapter in history. Dr. Carter slowly raised his hand, signaling everyone to be silent. At that moment, the entire group froze. There was no sound, no movement. Everyone understood that they were standing at the very beginning of a great discovery. This wasn't the last line of a story, but the first heartbeat of a story that hadn't been heard for thousands of years. What was hidden beyond the darkness wasn't yet clear. So one thing was certain. This tomb wasn't going to reveal all its secrets at once. And the next step was likely to surprise even those who had been skeptical. If you find all this as fascinating as we do, stay tuned, because the story is about to get even deeper. Then suddenly, the beam of a flashlight fell on a gleaming surface, and everything seemed to stop. No one spoke. No one even breathed properly. At that moment, everyone realized that they were no longer chasing a rumor or a legend. They were standing right there, beneath the city of David, deep underground, in a sealed chamber that had remained untouched for thousands of years. Dr. Carter's team stood close together, their flashlights trembling slightly in their hands. What they saw before them wasn't part of a story. It was real. Before them lay a treasure, neatly arranged, carefully preserved in the corners, as if waiting for someone to arrive. Near the walls of the chamber were golden vessels inscribed with ancient Hebrew letters. Their gleam made them look as if they had just been polished. The air in the chamber carried a strange scent, a mixture of spices, resins, and earth, slightly sweet and slightly heavy. In one corner, a 7-branched menorah rose from the floor. It was heavy, sturdy, and its design perfectly matched descriptions of the menorah from the first temple. This wasn't a museum replica. It was real, perhaps the original item itself. And it was clear from everything they saw that this was just the beginning. Everywhere they looked, a story unfolded. In some places, there were fragments of silk, faded, certainly, but still clearly identifiable, as if bearing witness to the ancient trade routes that stretched all the way to India. Intricate ivory carvings hinted at exchanges with African regions. There were also small jewelry boxes, some still closed. Inside, there were indications of earrings and necklaces studded with emeralds, rubies, and lapis lazuli. This room wasn't just filled with treasure. It was silently telling the story of an entire world. An archaeologist leaned forward, only able to utter in amazement that even the greatest museums paled in comparison. But the real shock came when a sealed clay jar cracked slightly. At that moment, a strange fragrance filled the room. Saffron, frankincense, and hints of citrus. But the scent of the spices was so fresh that it felt as if time had stopped. Everyone was struck by the strangeness of how everything could have survived in such perfect condition after thousands of years, as if someone had deliberately preserved it for future generations. Still, not everything was completely understood. Some of the pieces bore markings the team couldn't identify. The design of some artifacts seemed unfamiliar, neither completely ancient nor belonging to a specific style. This sparked excitement, but also suspicion. Questions arose as to whether these items could date back to the time of Solomon's son, Rehoboam, or another ruler who had concealed his wealth with a myth. Standing in this room, It was difficult to ignore the suspicion. The team believed that further progress would yield even more important clues. Every jewel, on every carving, spoke volumes. The individual pieces combined to create a picture that directly recalled ancient texts. Yet, this site didn't feel like a final discovery. It felt more like the first glimpse of a much larger story. For this reason, the work was carried out with extreme care, with laser scanners recording every surface. Nothing was touched without recording the full details. Everyone knew that a small mistake could damage the heritage the desert had preserved for centuries. A single menorah could change our understanding of the temple, but the team was in no mood to celebrate. They hadn't come looking for ordinary treasure, but for a tomb, and this room didn't look like one. Yet, everyone had a deep feeling that the story didn't end there. This was just the first layer. Whatever lay deeper was hidden for a reason, and the symbols carved on the walls attracted the most attention. The gold was magnificent in its own right, but the markings raised real questions. In the torchlight, a set of symbols etched into the stone became clearly visible. These weren't mere decorations. They held a hidden meaning. Right in the center was a star-shaped seal, sharp, clear, and deliberately engraved. This seal bore a striking resemblance to the symbol of Solomon mentioned in ancient texts. Not just the identity of a king, but, according to legend, a symbol associated with wisdom and power. And this was what got the team thinking the most. The carvings on the walls were anything but ordinary. Straight lines, curved spirals, and sharp angles. Everything was so precise that it resembled an engineer's drawing. It wasn't just decoration, and an archaeologist whispered that it was mathematics, but thought far beyond the typical temple measurements. Some of the figures displayed proportions and structures so intricate that the 10th century BCE era suddenly felt more modern than expected. In a corner of the room lay a few clay tablets, as if someone had left them to be read. They were engraved with Hebrew script, some clearly, others blurry. One tablet bore the same temple measurements as the ancient texts, but the other tablet was different. The language was different, and so was the writing. It looked more like a riddle than a simple record. It mentioned something like a key that could be linked to some hidden knowledge. The team paused. No one spoke aloud, but everyone wondered if it was simply information about building a building, or a way to conceal something else. At that moment, someone's gaze fell upon a dark corner of the wall. A small box was there, easily overlooked. Small in size, but it looked heavy. It was locked with metal clasps and bore the same star-like symbol that was visible on the walls. There was no visible lock, no obvious way to open it. The team gathered around it, but no one touched it. Everyone felt that opening it might be risky. Questions swirled in everyone's minds. Were the real secrets hidden here? Did this point to something even bigger? Or would it only raise more questions? Then someone noticed a symbol in the carvings that didn't match anything they had seen before. It seemed out of place and out of time. And that's where the story took a new turn. Dr. Carter's team was still trying to decipher the strange star-like carvings when another discovery was made. Near the eastern wall of the tomb, in the dim light, some writing became visible that wasn't easily noticeable at first glance. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be 5 lines written in ancient Hebrew. Time had worn them down, but the words were still clearly discernible. It read, "As the stars guide the way, so may knowledge guide my hand." This line silenced everyone. The reason wasn't just the language, but the tone. It didn't sound like an ordinary religious inscription. It felt more like something a person, perhaps Solomon himself, had left behind for himself or for future generations. After that, everything happened quickly. The base camp buzzed with activity. Photos were taken, notes were made, and information was sent to various places. Before dawn, news of the discovery had spread throughout the research world. Some experts said that the writing, the language, and the location all matched the period of Solomon. He also hinted that the surrounding structure appeared to be from the same period, around the 10th century BCE. But not everyone agreed. Some immediately raised questions. They argued that the words seemed too clear and precise. Others saw signs in the symbols that appeared to be from a later period. There were also suspicions that it might be a later addition. As the discussion grew, the debate intensified. Online discussions became heated. Some even suggested that the mention of such wealth didn't align with religious accounts. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, the question of who would have ownership of the site also arose. The atmosphere became even more tense. But beneath all the noise, one thing was becoming clear. These carvings weren't just telling the story of a single encounter. They were hinting at alliances, trade, and shared understanding. If this proved true, it would mean that what had previously been considered solely a matter of faith might also contain historical truth. And just as the debate reached its peak, the team found something in a sealed chamber behind the wall associated with Sheba. Not an inscription, not a crown. Something that, if revealed, could change the entire narrative. And perhaps that's why it had been hidden so deeply. Lab tests confirmed that the metal found was indeed from the 10th century BCE. The time period matched. But with this confirmation came more questions. Could this be Solomon's ring? The royal seal used to issue decrees and ratify agreements with distant lands? Gradually, the team realized that this might not just be a piece of jewelry, but a symbol of a king's identity. Still, they decided against jumping to conclusions, as similar rings from later periods have also been found in history. Every detail was examined with microscopes and lasers, and even the smallest scratch was discussed. Handling it wasn't easy. A slight mistake could erase centuries-old evidence. But the risk had to be taken, because if this truly turned out to be something connected to Solomon, it could become the most direct evidence of his life ever found. During this time, the team noticed some strange patterns on the wall. Upon closer inspection, it became clear that these weren't words, but rather some kind of musical pattern. The markings looked like they were made for ancient musical instruments. If you like such mysterious and fact-based stories, subscribe to the channel now, like the video, and stay tuned for more groundbreaking discoveries.